Great. I just started the recording, so
Okay.
that you'll know that you're recording, and I can minimize you so you don't look quite so big. How's
Oh,
that?
thank you. I appreciate that.
You're on a little, you're on only on a portion of the screen now.
I feel like I've lost weight.
Hey, if that works, man, I am down with it, right? Okay. Now you probably won't be able to see, you might be able to see the screen. I don't know, but I will post a PowerPoint too. Just not right now. Okay, here we go. Oh, yes, fine, guys. Okay. Is this like painful for you guys?
No, we're fine.
Why can't we see the minimize button up here?
I'm gonna try escape.
Sorry, Annette, we lost you. I mean, you're still with us, but we can't see you.
Okay.
So if you're okay with that, just speak up when you want to talk, okay?
Sounds good.
All right, we'll do that. And then I'll mess with it during break, all right? So that we can keep moving forward. All right, so this leads us to that, after watching that video, you can see how our brain works, right? So we have a brain and then we have our eyesight. So our brain is jumping to these conclusions that we have gathered over many, many years. So this can lead to what we call stereotyping. Now, is stereotyping good, bad, or both? Yes, I would agree with Ben that stereotyping just means that we're grouping data or data points in some manner that makes sense to us, sense making, right? So that if I see a room full of people and half of them are dressed in Oregon State orange and black and half are in U of O green and yellow, I'm going to make a stereotypical decision that those are fans from two different groups, right? Is that a negative thing? Probably not. But then I got to choose who I want to sit with so I don't get clobbered, right? But we can also, over years and years of negative stereotyping embedded, and especially as we grow up, when I look at these news reports around the world of demonstrations that people are bringing their children to, even in our own country, regardless of where you are on the subject of vaccinations and masking, we're seeing parents bring their little kids to demonstrations where there's a lot of hatred and yelling and screaming and stuff going on. So those kids are going to identify with their parents. These are the people they look to learn what's going on in the world. Now, are we opening their minds to learning about other people and how we make decisions and how to effectively come together in a community and make a decision? Not at all. But so you can see that if you extrapolate that over some of the hot spots in the world, how people are passing on their prejudices against their neighboring states or whatever, parties, whatever it is. So we become more and more and more polarized. But hopefully we know that we have the ability, we have strong cognitive power as humans. So we can break through that, which is really important. So just something to be thinking about. When you hear the word, oh, you're stereotyping, it's not necessarily a bad thing, although in our vernacular, it often is. Okay, so one of the things we do in perception is we also attribute causation. So why is something happening the way it is? So it's interesting that we have, as humans, we do this thing. We see this a lot in management and in organizations. So we can look at attributing behavior either internally or externally. So internally means, right, I meant to do this, right? I meant to, I'm taking ownership for my actions. External means I didn't have a choice, it happened to me, right? So for instance, think about this in management. Let's say Steve comes into work late and he says, well, first of all, my 2-year-old hid my car keys and I couldn't find them. Then I got on the freeway and there was an accident on the bridge. I come from Vancouver, blah, blah, blah. And then, the sun was in my eyes, everybody slowed down, whatever. And then I couldn't find a parking space, okay? That would be an external attribution, right? So now Ben comes in late, same amount of lateness, and he says, there are a series of things you wouldn't believe today, but clearly these types of things can happen. So I need to leave earlier every day to make sure that I'm not late. So some days I'll be early and some days I'll be on time. That's an internal attribution, okay? Now, one of the interesting things is that as managers, and we have a lot of research to back this up, as managers in organizations, we tend to ascribe internal attribution, internal causation when our employees do something that we don't like. They're lazy, they're not motivated, they don't care, they're stupid, whatever. Actually, that part doesn't work because it has to do with something they have control over. So we attribute this to something wrong with the employee in their attitude. But if we make the same mistake, we usually attribute it to an external factor, which is kind of interesting, right? Now, I think we all, many of us do that on a regular basis, whether we're a manager or employee or not. But still, there's something to be cognizant of as a manager. Why do we always jump to the fact that the reason there was poor performance on the part of the employee was because they lack motivation or they have a bad attitude? I mean, that's the first place most managers go, right? So has anybody in here been a manager or supervisor? So do you see that? Did you see that?
Try to avoid doing that if you can. Kind of
Yes.
What actually happened in the situation.
Yeah.
Label somebody as doing something just without evidence.
Yeah, particularly if it's a new pattern, right? So, they've been a good employee and then all of a sudden they're coming in late. That's like a big red flag and an opportunity to sit down with them and say, hey, I noticed something's going on. I don't need to know any personal details, you want to be careful there. But is there something we can do to fix this, or is this temporary? And what I tell employees too, or used to when I was managing, during their orientation and onboarding, is what? If you find yourself in a difficult situation, like maybe you have a child that keeps running away from home, or you have a child in a hospital, or whatever, a sick parent that's happened, come and let us know. You don't have to tell us what the situation is. It can still be private, but let us know something's going on. But let us know you're working on solving the issue. And if you need help in terms of change of schedule or something like that, make us a proposal. That way, we are not going to be frustrated. You're not going to be frustrated, and we can work something out. So, but this fact that we tend to ascribe poor performance on our own part to outside factors and poor performance on the part of others is internal factors, right? I see this too among faculty sometimes, right? So an interesting concept in this whole idea of this relationship between supervisors and employees is what we call the self-fulfilling prophecy. We also see it, by the way, in child raising. So a lot of the concepts and theories that we apply in the workplace often can be applied in the family unit, right? Because they're in their own way, they're both organization groups of people, right? And we have interaction among different personalities and types. So the self-fulfilling prophecy in the organization or workplace is that the supervisor forms expectations, right? So I assume based on some criteria that an individual is going to be a good student or a poor student or whatever. So I might have, so like Eli was talking about going into the bank with his mask and his hat and everything, right? He might come into class like that, or like Amy did, and she's like, I'm sorry, here I am. And now she's smiling, I can see her eyes smile behind her mask. So I know it's all good, but I might think that she was trying to be kind of antisocial. Or Josh is sitting there with his arms folded. Not talking about Josh, but I am. So but look how relaxed his body is, right? So he's not like defiant in his looks. And I can see him smiling behind his mask too. So he could find it chilly in here, or he could just be resting his arms, right? He's relaxed back. But I might see the crossed arms. Now Steve has crossed arms and think, these people are angry with me, they're defiant, whatever. So it doesn't take much, right? But in a larger thing is, so now I've made some sort of expectation about the people in this room. Now I'm going to act on it. So if I think that you guys are being belligerent or antisocial, I'm going to act differently, right? I might protect myself in a way. So then, however I act is going to affect you guys. So if I treat you in a way that is less than friendly, what are you going to do? You're going to do exactly what I thought you were going to do, which is become more antisocial or angry. And so then it's the self-fulfilling cycle, right? It's really, really interesting. So in terms of an example that can be used in families as well as at the workplace, if you tell somebody they're not able to do something long enough, they believe it. Likewise, if you tell somebody, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, eventually they'll start believing. It takes a while and it takes consistency, but think about little kids learning to walk, right? The first time they take a step or try to, it is a face plant, right? So this is not exactly a fun thing to do. What do? They get cheered on and they try to stand up and pull themselves up and they try it again. And then they do another face plant, but somebody's cheering them on. They keep going. You can do this, you can do this. Otherwise, if we didn't have that dynamic, nobody would ever walk, right? So anyway, so think about this when you're managing as well. Again, this goes back to this creating a positive culture in the workplace. Okay, so in terms of perception, when I mentioned that we have certain ingrained prejudices or things that get in the way of us making a very objective assessment of what's going on in front of us. So these are some of them. I also talk about these when I talk about interviewing and human resource management. So the halo or horn effect. So somebody comes in and let's say everybody who wears a hat, I have decided, is angry and antisocial, okay? So if that is the case, then I'm not going to even take the time to get to know Steve or Amy. I'm just going to assume, I'm just going to write them off in that way. So that one characteristic completely overrides any other signals that I get. Can be the other way around. So somebody walks in the green and yellow gear. I'm thinking, this is a fellow UFO person, yeah. Or is that a UFO water bottle, or is it just green?
Just like-
Ah, all right, but anyway, so then all of a sudden we're friends, right? These are my people. So we have to be careful with that we don't create an overall impression that way. Also, first impressions, you've heard that. First impressions are really, really important. If we didn't believe that, we wouldn't go to greater lengths to look really great the first time we go out on some sort of date or encounter with somebody that we want to like us. Or we wouldn't dress and differently when we go to an interview. We would show up in our, maybe not if you've been Zooming from home, your pajama bottoms and your slippers. I can't tell you the number of times I've gone to the store in my slippers, but senior moment maybe. But first impressions are important and they do make a difference. But what you have to do as a manager or an employee or just a member of a group is not to close that door, right? It's to keep it open and keep learning about people. So one of the examples I have is that when I was the administrator of a healthcare organization, I was hiring and we were in the transition of paper to electronic records at the time. So I still needed somebody in records and somebody who could make that change. Very tedious job. Oh my gosh. So anyway, I'm interviewing this person and she comes in and, I bring her in and I always try to put people at ease. I always do a round table, so I'm not across a desk, stuff like that. And I have water out and everything. So I'm trying to put her at ease and she won't look me in the eye. Okay. So this is really hard for me because I need to gauge what's going on with people. And clearly she's nervous, but I mean like really nervous. And I would ask a question, I'd get one-word answers. And I thought, okay. And then I thought, this is not good. No, well, maybe it's just, so anyway, I hung in there with her. And I don't remember exactly how I got her going, but I really realized she had a lot to offer. And I took a flyer and hired this woman. She ended up being one of our best employees. She was an extreme introvert, and on top of that, she was very shy. So that was just hard for her to be around people. Well, she just rocked it in the medical records area because she was, in charge back there, and it was her domain, and she got to let in who she wanted and keep the rest of us out. She ended up, she had a college degree. She ended up getting her master's in psychology and becoming a clinical psychologist because she learned skills slowly of working with other people. And it just turned out really, really well. But she was a diamond in the rough. If I hadn't gotten rid of that first impression, I wouldn't have had such a long-term employee. So I would have missed out. So got to think about those things. The recency one is, we use this a lot in interviewing, which is you compare somebody to the person right before them. So, if Josh 1 comes in and bombs the interview, Josh 2 comes in and does a mediocre job, he may seem like, the cat's meow because in comparison. So you have to, again, so this is one of the reasons why when we interview, we have set procedure, questions, stuff like that we ask. And we try to take notes so that we're looking at each person individually. And then the last one, I was just telling the class this week, I don't think it was you guys, about, when you're interviewing, the best thing you can do to get a job is to get the interviewer to talk about themselves. They will love you. They won't know why, but it's because you asked. So the question, without seeming obvious, and it doesn't work so much with HR, it works better with like the manager, when you get to the manager or lead person. Say, you know, this is such an interesting field, I really am excited about this opportunity. I'm kind of curious how you got where you are, because that seems like a great job track or career place. And they'll tell you a little bit, and then you're nodding and smiling, and they keep going. 40 minutes later, they're in love with you, right? Because now you're my people, right? When I, we're like this. And the HR person will say, okay, which of those 3 qualified people do you want to hire? Oh, I'm hiring Quinn. Okay, great. Why? Well, because he's a great fit. Okay, tell me a little bit more. They can't tell you anything. Nothing's substantial. But Quinn gets the job. So, I mean, it doesn't always work, and it sounds like, sounds petty, but when you think about it, there is some reasoning behind it, some logic in that. Running a department, I've established a certain culture, right? A certain way of doing things. And if Quinn is kind of on board, I'm hoping he's on board with me, then, you know, he might be a good fit. But he could just be looking like he's on board just to get the job. And then we'll see how it goes, right? So don't overestimate just because somebody's like you, that's great. Okay, so I'm gonna try a little activity with you guys. So I need everybody to pay attention. So there is a scenario up here on the screen that you need to read. And read carefully, I'm gonna ask you some questions about it. It's gonna disappear, okay? All right, you ready? All right, here are some questions. So these are true or false. So if you maybe do it on your phone, on your computer, on a piece of paper. Have some paper if you want to borrow it. Writing instrument. Answer these as quickly as you can. Annette, can you see the screen?
Sorry, I can't. I'm looking through the book trying to see if it's in there on a page or I'm sorry, I don't have anything.
Okay. I'm gonna try. Oh, okay. Well, you guys can see. See if I can get this puppy up here. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Yay. Okay. I'll post it for you, Annette, afterwards. Sorry, if I take it off the screen, they can't see what they're doing.
I can help. You could share that screen while you have the other one over there. I can do it if you want, or I can.
Sure, well, can you show me how?
Yeah.
Okay. IT to the rescue. This is Eli. Eli.
No,
Brett here.
so. We go, where's the mouse? There it is.
Oh, we're gonna share, like real share.
Yeah, like that.
Okay.
So then.
Oh, that's
It's gonna
so
be here. And then she can see this screen. So when we. Do full screen this one. That's the wrong way to do that, isn't it?
If you,
See, now I need your help.
second one, but this one,
Duplicate? or is-
duplicate.
Okay. All right, didn't expect that.
Maybe it's, but we got full screen here.
Hey, get out of there. All right, let's try it again.
You guys are very patient. And for this, I'll let you out early. Exactly.
You could maybe leave the screen like this. It's pretty big like that already.
It is fine, yeah.
I still want her to be able to see it though. Alright, well, it's better than it was.
So she can't see it?
She can see it.
Okay.
Can, yes.
Oh, you can? Okay, all right. So now we have to get back here. Thank you, Eli.
Well, I tried.
So can you take a quick screenshot of that? Or read it, might be faster. Okay, here are the questions. Let me know when you're done reading it, Ann. And it's totally worth the effort, you guys. She's a good person.
Absolutely.
Okay, read it?
Yes.
All right, here's the questions. True or false? Or I have no idea. Okay. I'm gonna keep this on my own time, you guys. I'm gonna get this right. Well, I know the answer, Eli, but I'm gonna wait.
Okay.
So I don't, like, just, let me know when you're done. Okay, are we there? Close enough? Close enough? Oops. Okay. All right, so the thief was tall, dark, and broad. What do we have?
True.
They're false.
Okay, it says, why did you say false?
Cause it doesn't specify whether they stole anything.
It just says a person is tall,
Yeah,
dark,
somebody
and
else,
broad walked in. We don't know if that's a thief,
they did demand the exam,
but we
so they
may,
might just be impolite.
right, so we don't know if somebody else could come in. The professor turned off the light.
True.
Not everybody's hesitant, okay. The professor. Okay,
We got that one in a second.
all right.
Yeah.
A tall figure demanded the examination.
True.
True and false, okay.
Yes, true.
A tall, dark, broad figure demanded the exam.
Oh, broad. Better watch out for this.
Okay.
He's dark because the lights are.
Yeah, right.
Okay, number 4, the examination, the exam was picked up by someone.
True.
True, I think.
False.
Okay, let's take a look.
You just pick stuff up.
Well, the exam wasn't necessarily in the drawer,
Oh.
see, tricked you again.
Where's the exam?
Right, so we don't know for sure, right?
I
Could
put
be.
true. Clearly
I know, right? Tricky.
wasn't true.
All right.
5.
Thank you. The exam was picked up by the instructor.
False.
Okay, Quinn says false. What do you got? Oh, Quinn says- So we don't know. He picked up what was in the drawer. So we don't know if the exam was in the drawer.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're getting the drift of it. All right. A tall, dark figure appeared after the professor turned off.
True, I think. Yeah,
Looks like, all right. The man who opened the drawer was the professor.
True.
You guys,
No,
everybody's
no.
hesitant now.
oh no, it says it
Professor
right
opened the
there.
drawer. Yeah, that's a pretty finite one, right? Okay, the professor ran down the corridor.
Maybe.
The individual,
We don't know who ran down. We don't know who took the stuff out of the drawer. We're assuming,
what it was, or the person.
right, exactly. So are we
That was
on
a question mark.
8?
Yeah. 8 is just
Oh,
undefined.
I didn't know
Yes.
there's a question mark option.
Yeah, there's a third option, which is
Okay.
I didn't read it.
Number 9, the drawer was never actually opened.
False on that one.
Yes, that's a good one. We knew that. Opened the drawer. Okay. Number 10, 3 people are referred to in this case.
That's a question mark.
Question mark.
Okay, we know there's an instructor. We know there's a tall, dark person,
Forgot about it.
and we know there's a dean,
Then it could be 4. But we could be somebody else. who
but there
ran
could be a
after
mystery.
Individual could be a fourth person.
So that could be unknown. Because if somebody else came in and took the stuff and ran down the corridor out of the drawer. So the dean could have come in, talking to the professor or whatever, or somebody, the professor could have turned his back, somebody could have come in, seen the open drawer, grabbed it, ran out, and we don't know who that was. Right? So, interesting stuff, right?
Yeah.
So again, it just kind of reminds us that we have these mental models and heuristics that we use that help us make decisions quickly. Now, in many instances, this is really important because we can't spend 15 minutes deciding if we should put the stapler on the right side or the left side or of the desk or whatever. So sometimes it doesn't really matter, but hello. But if in fact it's something important, and particularly as a manager, we're jumping to conclusions. So gathering facts can be really, really important when it involves other people or when it involves decision-making that affects other people and their behavior, right? So welcome, Curtis. We have Annette on the screen today. So Curtis has joined us, and I'm sorry you missed a fun exercise.
Oh.
That's okay. I'm gonna put it on campus. You can do it there. All right, so I was gonna say it's time for a break. Okay, so we've been here an hour. Let's take a break.
All
We'll
right.
take one break, we'll come back, and then we'll probably finish up. How's that? Was 10 minutes enough, or do you guys want more? 10? Okay,
Yeah. I think there was a ding. There might be someone in the waiting room again,
okay, let's check.
maybe. When you first opened it up, there was another person that didn't actually join.
Noise.
So I was happy to see Eli having a little trouble finding the mouse too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
I always thought they put that TV on.
great. Why can't I see anything else?
Click on Zoom. Oh,
Oh,
you could close the screen share.
oh,
Yeah, so it's on screen share mode.
okay. Why can't I see, can you see screen
It's
share?
at the top of your main monitor.
Behind you
If you hit,
or
Oh,
in front of
you
you
hit stop share. At the top.
at that green bar.
but you guys can see. So cool. Okay, so it's just me and Annette. Okay, and then I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording or pause recording. So your little picture is now being recorded. And if you all, so Quinn and Amy, if you look up here at the picture, you can see I blurred the background for you. Okay. And let's try this and see if it works.
Yeah.
Okay, now, hold on, watch this.
Got it.
Actually, see, she's just getting the presenter view, but I put the.
No, you're screen sharing the one behind you.
Right, but the one that's up there, you can't see the next slide.
Right, because you blocked it, I see it.
I know, tricky, right?
Since we wanted to read ahead.
Yeah, right. Well, okay, boring, right? Okay. So perceptions, I think we have a pretty good view of, we've kind of awakened to this idea of perception. Like the world is not reality, is what we perceive it to be, right? Now, something that is really important in organizations, particularly today in this 21st century of craziness, is learning, constant learning. One of the outcomes at Oregon Tech for all of our degree programs as a university that we have at the top of the list is for students leaving our programs to have the ability to continue learning, questioning, learning, and adapting in the real world, because this is what employers want. So this idea of learning is about continually developing. But think about it, permanent change in behavior that occurs as some sort of interaction with our surroundings, right? Reading anything, hearing somebody talk. We all just learned a lot about precision cast parts, and we are different because of it. I have nightmares.
We're better for it, I would say.
So you can't exist in an environment that you're interacting with and not continue to adapt and change. We're just not aware of it. Because a lot of the adaptations are iterative. They're in very tiny amounts, right? But we want to, in the workplace, we want to facilitate this learning process in a way that benefits everybody. So one way is, and this is kind of a big chapter, you guys, I apologize. Whoever, the expert who wrote this is really, or experts are really good and very knowledgeable, but clearly they're enamored with their topic because they put a lot in it. So I pulled down some of the highlights for you. All right, behavior modification. Most of us have been introduced to this concept, which means that we can alter somebody's behavior by interacting with them in a way that either, punishes or rewards what the behavior. So we hear this again, if we go back to the idea of families and parenting, we hear this, reward with the good, punish the bad, right? So the carrot and the stick. So if they're reaching for the hot stove, you slap the hand so they don't get burned or fall in acid.
Don't slap them too close to the acid.
Yeah. But, if they're trying to take their steps, we continue to praise. So they keep trying, even though they keep making face plants. So unfortunately, little small children are very bouncy and resilient. They must have a nice layer of bouncy material around them. But it is very environmental, what we're doing with this behavior modification, right? So here I did take this chart from your book. I think I did. And it sort of gives you the idea of how this works. I like the idea of the ABC. Now I will tell you that management scholars and authors love acronyms. There will be like the 4 Ds, the 5 Cs, ABC, whatever. But in this case, I like it. So the antecedent is what happens before the behavior, right? And that can influence the behavior, which is what the person does, which hopefully then can change the outcome, right? So if we interfere and add something in the environment before somebody does their work, then we can possibly change that, right? And so here it has an example, right? A warning light goes off. And so, it's like danger sign, right? somebody points a gun at you, yes. So then the outcome is people are relieved, right? Okay, we avoided this. Or it could be that the machine operator is recognized, the supervisor says, great job, well done, yeah. So I'm not gonna get into, the book spends a lot of time on behavior modification, which I think many of us have fairly good grasp, but read through or at least skim through that so you get more of the nuances. But some of this is grounded in what we call also social learning behavior. Social learning theory is that we can learn from those around us. And when you think about it, it's like, I call it vicarious learning. So you can see that it's we watch people and we learn from them. So one example might be that, let's say that Steve and I work together and we're at the same level, okay? But Steve gets promoted and it's a job I would love to have, right? So I start watching how Steve performs at work and I think, okay, that's probably why he got promoted. So I emulate those kinds of behaviors so that I too can get promoted. So that's that way of learning. You know, again, we'll focus in on somebody that we admire, want to be like, or is in a position that we want, and we will emulate what they do, thinking that that will help us be successful as well. So this is social learning theory, and we can influence, you know, leaders in organizations can be very, very influential. You know, and that's why we hope to hold our leaders or our managers to a high level of ethics and behavior, but sometimes that doesn't work out, right? Every time I mess with this, I have to go back here. Okay. There we go. All right, so a newer phenomenon, it's been around for a while, something called the learning organization. And when we move farther along, remember I said we'll start with the individual, then we'll add like groups and teams and a larger organization. And at that point, we'll actually talk about how the organization is structured in terms of authority and communication channels and decision-making and all of that. So a learning organization is actually a sign of a type of organization. Typically, it's a very organic organization with very few layers of management. A learning organization is one in which learning and new knowledge is embraced at all levels, where information is shared, it's not hoarded, right? And so an organization that's learning is going to be one in which those who are closest to the problem will be listened to. So for instance, you know, if you're on the line and there's a problem, the supervisor would listen to you as far as, okay, what's the best way to solve this? Do you have some ideas? Because you're the expert, right? And so, and there's no like top down. So everybody is a problem solver. And then everybody's constantly learning. The other thing that happens in a learning organization is that they invest in people. So they're constantly training and they're constantly developing skills and knowledge of all their people. So that's pretty cool, right? But when you think about it, if you do this, you have a competitive edge against organizations that aren't doing this. And think about how much more quickly you can adapt to market forces if you're listening to the people who are interacting with those forces, right? And you're making those changes. So it's a model that I would say high knowledge industries have adopted, but also those that must move quickly. So we're starting to see this more in like startups. A startup is a really good example of a learning organization. Okay. So we're going to move a little bit. We talked about perception and we've talked about behavior. So behavior doesn't just happen, right? We are also, as humans, we have these things called attitudes and emotions, and they're not the same thing. So you can see on the screen that attitude is something that we have towards an object, type of person or whatever. So maybe my attitude towards say something that represents the University of Oregon, which I brought up earlier, is an attitude that I hold, right? And that doesn't change from day to day. Okay. So it is a long-term thing that we hold, right? We don't just keep changing how we think and feel about something. Emotions, though, on the other hand, are much more, much less static. And so they can change and can be experienced for a very short period of time, right? Now, sometimes we have emotions that kind of last all day. So, but let's say you just found out that, like, when Steve got his promotion, he was really excited about it, right? And go Steve. Now, he might have been in kind of a bad mood before then because maybe, he had a flat tire on his way to work or whatever. He got a promotion and now he went from down in the dumps to wahoo, right? So emotions are us reacting, but they all affect our behavior. So it's important to recognize these. And again, your text is going to go into a lot more information on both of these, but it's important also for us to understand employees more stable attitudes around us, because that helps us understand how to help them learn and become part of the team better. So for instance, and I think I'm going to guess, so Ben, you kind of alluded to this as far as your management style, but when I wanted to know like how to make a change in a work group or a team or whatever, I would sit down with them, and the best way to find out what they're thinking and feeling and their attitudes towards the company, the work, whatever, is to ask them, right? And no, do you disagree, Curtis? It's okay.
Sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. It just depends. Like right now we have a union organizing situation at work, so we're not allowed to do any of that currently. Yeah.
Right.
But for
No,
the most
absolutely,
part,
absolutely.
for the most part, yes, I ask people exactly how they feel, or more accurately, they tell me how they feel, whether I want to know or not.
Yes, and but you know what? They do that because they can, right? So if you were a different person, they might not approach you.
It's because I listen.
Yeah,
I take
and you
action
don't
on
fire
things.
them.
Yeah, I take action on most of the stuff that they tell me about.
You don't transfer them over to the asset department.
No.
I'm sorry, I'll stop. I'll stop.
It was 1987, get over it.
I know, right. Oh, I can imagine there are like triple, quadruple, infinite safety measures now in place there. Please just tell me they're all.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. So, and then we also recognize too, that sometimes we talked about patterns, like if an employee has been pretty steady in their behavior and then they're all of a sudden different, you don't assume that that is who they are at their core, right? Something could have happened. And like I used to tell people, like, I mean, I'll never forget, I came into work one day and I had something really serious on my mind. It had to do with my family, it had nothing to do with work. But I walked in and I was in this really quiet, introspective place. Okay. So if you know me at all, you know that is not a common thing for me, right? That I'm always doing this. I'm always talking to people. And highly social. So I walk in, they hardly say hello to anybody. I go to my office and I stay in there, but I don't leave. And I'm quiet. They come by and I have this stony face look on my face. And literally person after person after person came into my office that day, like 3 in a row before I figured out the pattern, and said, Why are you upset? What did I do wrong? I'm like, really? I'm an equal opportunity, bad mood person, okay? Right? But people assume, right? And so, you know, if I walk by Quinn, and he's gonna assume that, right? So I used to tell people, I would come in and say, and I would lead it, I would ask them to do the same. I had a really shitty morning, okay? I don't even want to talk about it. I'm gonna try to really hard get out of it. So just know this is not about you, this is about me, and I'll be fine in a little bit, okay? I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And so if we at least have those conversations, I don't tell them all my personal problems. They don't need to know that. But emotions, attitudes, slightly different. Okay. There's an important concept regarding these things, but also with values, who we are at work. It's called cognitive dissonance. And this is where we're placed in a place, we're put in a position where we're asked to do something that conflicts with our values or who we are. So over time, that can really be stressful. And think of this, a really great example is being in a sales position. So a lot of commercial banks went through a period where they were just, they were very, very insistent that every employee cross-sell. And their employees were like on the front lines, you know, if you walked in, you're a new accounts person or a teller or whatever, you had to cross-sell the bank's products. And your salary and promotion was dependent on that, as well as other things. And so people felt they would get called on the carpet for not cross-selling. So, you know, even to the point where one of the stories was, this woman came in, she was really elderly, she just needed a checking account for this, and they wanted me to give her credit cards and set up investment account, all kinds of stuff that she didn't need. And she couldn't afford, right? So I wouldn't do it. And I got in trouble for it. So that's cognitive dissonance, where you're constantly, or you're being asked to, I use sales because it's easy to make up stories. But in a sales position where you're asked to talk about a product in a way that embellishes how good it is, when you know it's not quite as good as that, right? So that could be a conflict with you and your values, right? So over time, again, it weighs on you really, really hard. And those regrets can really fester. And a lot of times then your employees end up, if they can't leave their jobs financially or for other reasons, healthcare, whatever, then they become very negative. And let me tell you, whatever stuff rolls downhill in organizations. So if you are treating them poorly, they're going to treat the people in front of them poorly. And it just keeps on going down the line. So the better you treat your staff, the better they're going to treat your customers, okay? Another concept that you're going to explore here is emotional intelligence. How many people have heard of emotional intelligence? Okay, yeah, good. So it's the ability to, when you are in conversation or contact with another human or humans, to be able to understand where they're coming from, the emotion they're expressing, perceive what's going on, but also adjust to them as well for better communication and understanding. And so there are 4 pieces. I don't think I put that up. Let me see if I did. Oh, I did, look at that. Okay, so the first step is down at the bottom. That's called self-awareness. And this is where we're aware of our own emotions. So if I've just had an argument with my teenage kid, I don't have anyone, in the morning when I walk into work, and that's why I'm in a bad mood, I need to regulate that or be aware of it when I'm having a conversation with somebody. Okay, so self-awareness and aware of how you're perceived by others, right? So you have to understand who you are. And then there's this self-management, and this is where you learn to manage those emotions, right? So that even if I'm in a really bad mood, I can park that someplace and be reasonable and try to deal with that. Same thing, I can be in a really good mood. And by the way, nonverbal communication speaks so loudly, just like the example I gave about me walking in to work that day. Then social awareness is being able to understand and perceive what's going on with the other person and their emotions. Okay, so then now we have an understanding. We understand ourselves, we understand them. Now the top thing is we're able to adapt our style of communication to meet them where they are. Now, the way it's sometimes worded can sound manipulative, and it's not meant to be manipulative. It's meant to be able, just like if Curtis and I walk in and I say hello to Curtis in English, and he gives me a strange look, and I ask him how he's doing in English, and he says something in German, then that tells me, okay, we're not communicating that well. So I have two choices. You know, I can stop the communication, or if I know German, I can flip to German. That's not manipulating. That's just learning how to communicate well. So it's the same kind of thing only we're doing with emotions, right? So when it says managing other people's emotions, that doesn't mean that you're manipulating them. It means that if clearly they're upset, you're coming with empathy and you're coming with understanding or trying to find out, okay? All right, the good news is we can learn this and we can get better at this. And it tends, you know, our research and organizations shows that it tends to improve with maturity. Notice I didn't say age. It increases with maturity. So that's a good thing, right? And you know, when you think about it, all those experiences that we have, all that time under our belt, helps us with those mental models that we started talking about in the very beginning, that when I see people act this way, or I say I act this way, I tend to get this reaction. But if I act this way, I get this reaction. You know, we start putting that all together and we start building our emotional intelligence. Okay? And all of this leads to a concept that you will hear over and over and over again in the workplace, and that's job satisfaction. Okay, we use job satisfaction as a measure of how well our employees are doing in the workplace. Unfortunately, and it's a common criteria in our behavior research. Unfortunately, it's very complicated and complex. So you could like your job because you like the people that you work with, right? I've had, you know, I've worked at places where I came to work because of the people I was with. And we hated it. It was a toxic environment, but we were a unit and we really liked each other. It was us against the organization. But it could be, it's convenient. You like the pay, you like the hours, whatever. So like the nurses, when I was in healthcare, they are willing often to work in what's a toxic organizational environment because they are rewarded and satisfied by their one-on-one contact with patients and the fact that they make a difference. So, you know, that makes it harder to use this as an overall measure of why people are satisfied with their job. So when a better measure is something called organizational commitment. And you can see there are three parts, but it really is how you feel about the organization. So for instance, it's not an Oregon sweatshirt. Look at you, Josh. Is that a PCC? That's not a PCC shirt. Okay. So if you, I don't have my Oregon Tech gear on, but if you wear a jacket or a hat with your company's logo on it, that usually means that, you know, you at least feel good about the company. You don't hate it, right? So it's how attached you are to it, how committed you are to staying at there and to contributing to the organization. And so you can see the affective part is how emotionally attached you are. You know, like if you're constantly recruiting people to work there, you're talking about it on social media, you love this place. The continuous one is more about, am I going to keep my job or am I going to leave? And that is, you know, Retention and turnover are really important measures in an organization for how well we're doing with our employees. And that can be a lot of factors too. It could be salary, benefits, supervisors. What's the number one reason, according to HR research, what's the number one reason why people leave jobs, do you think?
Your boss.
Did I already tell that in the class?
I don't
I don't think so.
That's the number one reason I leave. the
remember.
Yeah,
Just seen it happen a lot.
yeah. People grumble about pay, people grumble about benefits. But what really forces them to change behavior, changing behavior is a big deal. People would rather just smack talk, but actually quitting and going and finding another job, that's a very stressful thing. People just don't do that. But the main reason is immediate supervisor, right? Not the CEO. We don't even know that person is, right? Yeah, number one job.
I heard screaming down the hall.
Yeah. Really, the CEO? Okay, so at least
Yes, I have.
he's in your location.
He comes by once a quarter to scream at people.
Yeah. Wow, I'm sure that's effective, right?
Well, and then he comes on and has these big presentations about servant leadership and talks it up, and then I hear him screaming down the hall. I'm like.
Wow, I can't even go there. That is amazing. Hmm. So if we look at this first one, which is our emotional attachment, look at those ingredients there. Right? I'm just thinking, if you're a supervisor, isn't this common sense? If you're an employee, wouldn't you like to be able to trust the people that you work for and with? I do. Be nice if you share the same values so you don't have cognitive dissonance. Things are fair. They're supported. So somebody's got your back when you have an angry client or patient or other person in your face yelling at you. They back you up. So I don't know. A lot of management is common sense, but this is how we build this emotional attachment. Okay. I am actually going to save this for next week. Not next week, week 4. So this has to do with decision making. And I'm guessing you haven't gotten there because that's next week's reading. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And let's look at where we are. I told you I let you out early. Was that who did I give credit for that? Oh, Eli. Eli is the reason you're getting out early because you came up and helped me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we have our chapters to read, and then this week you have an assignment to do. That's the end of chapter 2. There's an assessment. Okay, self-assessment. You're going to do a lot of those. And while we're talking about assessments, I want to say that some of these may seem and feel really, really personal. And if any of them set off any triggers that are unhealthy for you, then you need to let me know you're not going to do it, and I'll give you something else. Okay. So, I had a student who'd gone through a very traumatic event, and one of the self-assessments triggered a lot of really bad mental health ideation for him. And I felt horrible about that. So, don't just not do the assignment. You don't have to tell me what's going on. Again, we respect everybody's privacy. But if there's something that is really bothersome to you, then you need to let me know that you need a different assignment of some sort, and I will accommodate that. Okay. That is a rare occasion, but I thought I should throw it out after what that happened. So then next week, which is week 3, I've actually already loaded the video lecture for you. Okay, and PowerPoint, so you can look at it. And then the discussion forum is you need to engage. It's due week 3, the end of week 3 on Sunday night, 11:59. But it is designed for you to be engaged throughout the week. So if you look at the rubric, you can see that to get maximum points, your first post has to be by Friday of week 3. Okay, and then you need to respond to at least, I think I said 2 others, and you need to be posting on more than one day. Okay, because what happens is, this is the idea here is to get you guys connected again, all of us connected. So if you go in one day and it's, Saturday night, you read 2 posts, you do your thing, you haven't connected. And then what happens when somebody reads your post and has a question and wants to engage you in that question, and you're not checking back. So make sure you check back to see if people are commenting and have questions and that sort of thing, okay? Because the grading rubric reflects that. Just a heads up. And then there's a case study with questions for that week as well. That is due the end of the week on Sunday that you'll upload to Canvas, okay? It seems pretty straightforward. Any questions?
So for the discussion, we should make the initial post, reply to some people, and then come back again and reply to replies.
Yes. Or other posts.
Yeah.
Other initial posts, right? So, and this is kind of a small group. And some of you have been in my class before, and you know that I do it this way, so that probably won't be a problem. But if you find that you're posting early in the week and it's Saturday and other people haven't posted their initial post and you need to get more posting in, you can elaborate on your own post. Or I'll probably post on yours and you can post on mine, right? So there's a way around that if you're the only one. I don't expect that to happen. Okay, so I will be checking email frequently while I'm gone, although I'll be 9 hours ahead. So just keep that in mind as far as when I might respond.
You tell us the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell them how things are.
Quick question too, about the exam content, is that gonna be more based on slide material? Or the text?
I would say probably a combination, although probably more the text.
Okay.
So what I try to do here is bring out key points in the text, but also just reinforce it with like almost everything you saw here today, except those diagrams I called out, came from other sources, but it's saying kind of the same thing, but just in a different way. So, but the way the questions are worded, it should be fine. Yeah, either way. And again, the exams. So we'll look at a real calendar here. So your exam will be back in class in week 4, and then the exam is due that Sunday. So we'll meet one more time before you have to turn it in. But it'll open up, you have a whole week of it being open. So some of you may even actually do it early. But let me see, even though it has the wrong date, if we can get an explanation for you up here. Okay, October 25th. Yep, you're right. These shouldn't be posted at all. Okay, so you can see here, can you read that? You have 38 multiple choice questions and you have 90 minutes to do it. You can refer to the text spec, your notes, and the class lectures. So for me, a test is not about testing what you remember. It's a reinforcement, it's another learning tool. So you read it, we kind of talk about it in class, we might do some activities, and then when you do the exam, you're being reminded to go back, and if you don't remember, to find it, right? And apply it. So that's why they're always, my exams, except in some essay tests, are always open book, okay? Because it's not, I don't think memorization is learning. Now, clearly there are some things we have to memorize. I don't know about an IT, but like, multiplication tables. At some point you're memorizing them, right? The alphabet, I don't know. But here we're looking for something else. So it's just another touch point, okay? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording. So Annette, thank you for being such a good sport.
Thanks for zooming me in, Lori. I really appreciate it.
No problem. And you don't have to get out, but I'm just gonna stop the recording.
Okay.